2023 had been an excellent year for Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't think anyone can disagree with that fact. It had numerous brand new games and a few old ones released to the public. Let's not forget, very early on at April Fool's, we had Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, which came out to great public acclaim. And then we had things like the third update of Sonic Frontiers, or the brand new Sonic Superstars, bringing the classic formula back once again to modern audiences. And then, on top of all of that, you still have the multimedia aspects. There were numerous crossovers with other games, there was the Sonic Prime on Netflix series, which is still ongoing, and there was also the IDW Sonic comics. So, all of this suggests Sonic is on the up, and that's because he is. But I'm not talking about the direction of his future today, but just to clarify, the future does look bright for Sonic, no doubt. No, what I'm here instead is to talk about how this boom of productivity with Sonic further shades in contrast what I consider to be the worst time for the franchise, and that is the 2010s period, which only came to an end very recently with the advent of Sonic Frontiers and such. Why would I even bring this up in that case, you may ask? A fair question. And you see, the reason lies somewhere within vindication and explanation, because if we ignore what happened in the 2010s, it could occur again, and I would rather not have to repeat that. So let's just cut straight to the point. What is wrong with the 2010s of Sonic? Personally, I feel like this time period specifically represented Sega being the least confident in the franchise. The series itself, especially near the start of that time period, relied heavily on making fun of itself to get any sort of traction, and almost anything it did was drenched in layers of irony. And even when they were not, the scope of everything was drastically reined in. Coming from the 2000s, Sonic had a bunch of easy points to criticize. The main one being Sonic 2006, which even though it's ancient now still gets brought up to this day, but especially back then, it was used to criticize 3D gameplay, 3D environments, multiple characters with stories, trying to tell a story in a Sonic game to begin with, having humans even existing to begin with, and the fact that there's just too many elements distracting from the pure classic days of just Sonic and Tails running along Emerald Hill chasing Eggman. Sonic Generations obviously leads this time period off, and it's a very beloved game. I also enjoyed it at the time. I was excited whilst I was waiting for it to come out, but as the years have gone on, I've lost a lot of my love for that game. Because, unfortunately, Sonic Generations, despite supposedly being a celebration of the series, was really reserved. The story is an absolute joke, I'm pretty sure everyone can agree with that. It's harmless, yes, but considering this was again looking at everything that had happened and celebrating it, wouldn't you have wished more was done with the characters, with the time travel aspect? It would like getting one of those Marvel collaboration movies, Endgame, and then they don't really use most of the characters, and even the ones that are there, they don't pull on the strings of their backstories, or their past relationships, or their long-term struggles to try and conclude them. All of that's just sort of not mentioned, and they're cheering on Iron Man as he does everything. It wouldn't be as good as it was, would it? And that's what Sonic Generations is. It's that big moment, everything comes together, you've got time travel, you can link as much as you want, but it doesn't want to do anything with it, and it gives you the blandest version you could have possibly gotten. But let's bring this back to the modern day. I'm saying that recent events and the success of Sonic now contrasts this period more. But what element specifically has spurred this on? Well, in the Game Awards, Sega had a moment where they shared about 5 new game projects they're working on, none of them Sonic, but then they would quote in press releases about how Sonic's recent ascent had encouraged them to take this action and take bigger interest in their old IPs, which fans of those old IPs have been asking to come back ever since they stopped appearing. but it's only now that Sonic has a boom that they're considering to do this. The frustrating thing about it, though, is for me, reading through those press releases, it was like a backhanded comment where they, without really meaning to say so, admit that during the 2010s, Sonic wasn't a priority, it was a budget title, they didn't really care about it, and they just put it out here and there. And people back then were adamant that no, what they're doing is they're taking their time with the series to make it the best it can be. But if you look at Sonic in the 90s, Sonic in the 2000s, Sonic in the 2010s, and then let's not talk about 2020s because they're not finished yet. If you look at those 3 time periods, of which the 90s didn't even start at the beginning because Sonic didn't appear at the start, only one of those time periods had slow, thoughtful development times that were supposedly supposed to improve the series' quality, and that's the 2010s, because the other 2 were pumping out games and other media very frequently, if not more than once a year, and a lot of those games are still beloved. People don't say Sonic 2 is terrible, people don't say Sonic 3 is terrible, people do like to say Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 are terrible, but that's a whole different conversation. Point is, there was plenty coming out, and even if there was something you didn't enjoy, something else was on the way, and the series was clearly trying to push itself further and further and further. But then in the 2010s, we got the least amount of games, and of them, most of them were either met to mixed reception or negative reception. Generations, positive. Mania, positive, but we all know it was developed by Christian Whitehead and his team. Whereas you have things like Sonic Boom, terrible. Other Sonic Boom games, slightly less terrible but still not enjoyed. Sonic Lost World, mixed reception. Sonic Lost World on the 3DS, terrible. Sonic Boom TV series, cancelled, had its fans but it didn't do well enough. And the big one, Sonic Forces. I was on about Generations dropping the ball of a concept, but at least it pulled through with the bare minimum and gave you a good gameplay experience. But Sonic Forces ruined one of the best ideas you do with the Sonic franchise. What if Eggman wins? We've seen this concept used here and there in the past. This is Sega's first time in a long time of even entertaining the idea, but it was a budget title, reused assets, 3-hour-long gameplay experience, characters appearing but not actually doing anything. Waste of potential. And so you hear this conference with Sega where they're saying, oh, Sonic's booming now. Why was Sonic booming? The main element that changed the way Sega treated the Sonic franchise had nothing to do with the games, not even with Mania. Mania just made them bank on classic Sonic imagery more. But the thing that actually changed the way they see the series was the movies. Different people, not from Sega, took Sonic and made him work because it has plenty of potential in the modern day, and it was only after the movies paid forward that Sega decided to get their act together. The movies showed that Sonic can be endearing to an audience. The movies showed that you can have human beings and, oh look, the game didn't implode. The movie showed you can use GUN as an organisation. The movie showed you can use Sonic's friends and not just have them be background elements. Knuckles had a big pivotal role in movie 2, and the reception to him was so positive they're making a Knuckles specific spin-off series for the movie universe. The movies are what encouraged Sega to decide to even remake Sonic Colors, because they wanted this new audience to see Sonic in his best, and obviously Colors was highly rated. I don't like it, not the point. And guess what? That game came with a bunch of tie-in merchandise for the movies. That is the true thing that kick-started everything. That's probably what even allowed Kishimoto and the other developers of Frontiers to push the envelope as far as they did compared to, let's say, Sonic Forces. And even then, Sega wasn't completely, alright boys, off you go. There was still some restrictions to them. It's clear to see the base game compared to the game now, stark difference. But the point is, without the movies, none of that would have happened. And so, that's why Sonic was left for dead by Sega in the 2010s, because of all the backlash they got from their own bad decisions, by the way, in the late 2000s. They just threw their hands up in the air, stopped caring, and used Sonic to farm money here and there as they deemed fit. and sadly, people accepted it and ate it up. I understand, of course, a lot of people probably started with Sonic in that time period, and especially if they began with Generations or even Lost World on the Wii U, they could have a favourable opinion of the series. But if you look at it from a larger perspective of before that time, and then now, thankfully, in the 2020s, we can include after that time, there's a distinct difference in the 2010s. Normally, when it comes to video game development, it's a solid argument to talk about slower production, longer time, better quality. I don't know what the reason for this is, but when it comes to Sonic Team or Sega, that's not true. It's just not. We've had 10 years of the 2000s, 10 years of the 2010s, and a bit years of the 90s. It's not true. More production leads to an overall better franchise for Sonic, and the 2010s showed me that that was when Sega cared the least, and no matter how long they were developing those games, they were still budget at the end of the day. Forces was a 5-year-ish thing. If you want to bring up that they didn't spend all those years actually working on Forces, that's still my point, that they didn't care enough about their flagship franchise. What's your take on this topic? Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm just full of it? Do you think I should shut up and enjoy where the series is going? Or do you perhaps see what I mean, that it's important to highlight this so that history doesn't repeat in the future? Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. It really does help out the channel and shows me your support. If you'd like to help me even further, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video around to those who could be interested in this discussion. But with that all said and done, I hope you have a great day, and to see you next time. This is the Mighty Emperor, signing off.